Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and welcome to the 6th video of this Unity game development tutorial series. This time we'll be learning all about weapon animation and how we can use our weapon to actually physically attack. Now I know we've already had a little bit of experience with simple animation when it comes to how we use it, but we're going to go a little bit more advanced in this tutorial. But don't worry, it's not going to get horrendously difficult. We're just going to start creating animations, juggling them around a bit and doing different things with them, because obviously our weapon is not just going to do one single thing. It's going to have multiple animations depending on what our current state is and whether we want to attack or not. So let's get started. The first animation we're going to create, I feel, is probably the most efficient one. It's just going to be a simple idle animation, and all that's really going to consist of is the weapon that we have hold of just slightly bobbing up and down, and then we can kind of use that to manipulate different things. So let's get reacquainted with the animation tab, but let's also establish how we can use animation to move game objects rather than just change their color like we did previously. So what I want to do first is go to the play capsule, go to player camera root and click on the axe, and I'm going to rename this to hand axe, and I'm also going to turn it on. I know we've now got two axes in our scene, but we're using this to basically create new things. This is not how the game is going to be, so don't worry about having two axes turned on at the same time. Next, let's go to our animations folder. Let's right click, create a new folder, and we'll call this weapons, and in that folder make sure we're in there and we will create the animation for this axe. So let's go to the animation tab and let's make sure we are still on hand axe and then click on create. Now what we'll do is we will have this as idle axe. And obviously we've seen this before, we know what we're doing, we know how these frames work, but we're manipulating an object now, so we're changing its position. So I'm going to zoom in on the axe so we can see it a little better. And the idea is going to be the same as before, but we're not changing the colour. So we still need to press the record button to start. We need to make sure that we are at frame 0, and we need to make sure that the position and rotation of X, Y and Z is all identical to what it is now. So the best way to do this is take whatever number is in position X and retype it, so 0.58. And what we've done is set the first keyframe for the X position. Now we'll do it for Y, so minus 0.98. So we've set the first keyframe for that, and then 1.04. We'll do the same with rotation, 6.42, and then 83.81, and with Z, although it says 0, you cannot retype 0 because that may not work as intended. So what I normally do is type 1 and then retype 0. Now what we've done at this point is we've set the keyframe for the rotation and the position for all of these. So even if we don't change some of these numbers, it doesn't really matter, but you'll know you've set the keyframe right because they should start turning red. So what is the next course of action? Well, we need to make sure that we kind of bob the axe up and down. And I'm going to just change the camera up here again. I think we'll get rid of ground camera a little later on. But for now, let's set it back to main camera so we can see where the axe is. And I think after maybe 2 seconds, the axe has bobbed down just slightly. So we will say a frame 120. And we'll move our axe down just slightly to maybe there. And next what we'll do is we'll say after frame 240, so another 2 seconds, we'll have our axe bobbed up to round about there and moved slightly inward. So then by frame 360, we need to reset back to the first keyframe. Now to do that, what we'll do is the very first thing I'm going to do is on the Z, because we know this is 0, I'm going to set it to 1 and then back to 0. And what that will do is it will allow us to actually physically set the keyframe first and foremost over here. And that's important. So the rotation I don't think is changing at all for any of these positions. But what we can do, back to the start, if we click on the first keyframe, we can see that X is set as 0.58. So let's go all the way to the end and put 0.58. And then we can set the first keyframes again, 0.98 in the negative. So if we go on there and minus 0.98, and what that's done is the first keyframe and the last keyframe are identical. So that means we're able to loop this animation seamlessly. So first keyframe, exactly the same as the last keyframe. So if we press the record button once again to stop our animation, go to project and make sure that the idle axe animation does indeed have loop time. So if we press play now, we should see this axe move in our hand as though it's like kind of like an idle animation. We'll see how it goes and then we'll work with the timing as well. So hopefully this looks okay. Yeah, that's okay. You should probably, take a little bit more time, work around with it. I'm going to slow that animation down before we move on because it does seem a little bit fast, especially for an idle animation. So let's go to the hand axe once again, and let's go to animator. And this idle axe, we've dealt with this before, speed-wise. Let's have this set as 0.75. So it slows it down by 25%. Let's press play and see how this looks. Hopefully, this should obviously play the same animation, but it'll do it a little bit slower. You should always take more time to do these things than what I do. I'm just doing them for quickness of the tutorial video, but there we go. Our axe is now idle animating, and I'm quite happy with that. But obviously, if you want it slower, you could just change the speed right there, and it would slow down that axe animation. At the moment, the axe itself, when it's animating in its idle position, is going to look a little bit strange whenever we're moving around because it's not going to change just how much we kind of move the axe up and down as we move. Now, nature would dictate that if you're stood still, you could gently hold an axe like that. But if you're moving, the axe would kind of move a bit more violently, I guess is the right word to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to use it to our advantage. And we're not going to create a new animation per se, but we're going to create a new animation file. And then we're going to do a little bit of code to make sure that we can switch between both of these animations depending on what we are doing. So what we'll do is we'll take that idle axe animation, hold Control, press D, and we'll call this walk axe. Next, we'll drag that onto hand axe. And we should see, when we click on animator, that we now have two different animations. Now they are exactly the same, they're just named differently. So what we could do is change walk axe to speed of 2. So what that effectively means is that while we're idle, we're playing the animation at 75% of its usual animation rate. And while we're walking, we play it at twice its usual animation rate. Now this might look a bit daft, but we'll test it out, and if it looks okay, we'll leave it. If not, we'll change the speed a little bit more, but you should definitely work with this a little bit slower and a bit more in depth than what I do. So how do we make it so as when we're idle, we play the idle animation, when we're walking, we actually have the axe do that a bit more vibrant kind of look? Well, we can use the same script that we wrote for the walking. So when we were walking, we played the footstep sound, and when we stopped, we didn't. So we can use that same script. So let's go to scripts folder. Let's go to footstep sounds. And yes, I know it's not really based on footstep sounds anymore, but we'll keep this script name as it is for now, change it later on. And we just need to add in a variable, which is going to be the axe as of this very moment. So let's go to the top and let's add a new variable. So serialize field in square brackets, obviously, game object, and this one is going to be hand axe semicolon. So that effectively means that we need to only play the animation kind of once, but what we'll do is we'll make sure that we can at least get the animation set up correctly. So if we go here and below where we've got input.getKey, key code W, go below there and we'll start by saying hand axe dot get component, and in spiky brackets animator. So we've dealt with getting components before, and obviously this one we're saying we need to get the animator component. Open close bracket dot play with a capital P, and in parentheses and quotes we need to put the name of the animation. In our case it was walk axe, I believe. Let's quickly check that, because it's important that we do get the name correct, because if we don't it won't work. So walk axe and idle axe. So head back to the script and we'll say here copy that, and down here paste it again, and we'll have idle axe and save. So this is not quite going to be the final version of this script. I just kind of want to illustrate at this point how we are able to just add in a few lines of code and differentiate between each of those animations. So if we press play now, we may not have the desired effect, but again, this script will evolve a lot more as we get further and further in. But at this point, you can see that we've no need to actually create another animation. We can just reuse one and change some parameters on it to make it different. So let's press play and see what we actually get at this point. Give Unity just a moment to think about things, as always. And we are in the game. So you can see that the axe is kind of bobbing slowly, and it's still bobbing slowly because we've not set the actual variable. So this is a classic thing that I like to do. Followers of this channel will have seen this multiple times. I am a sucker for adding new things to scripts and forgetting to actually define them. So we need to go to our player capsule, scroll down, and hopefully you did spot that. We just need to add in the hand axe here, and that is that right there. So obviously we didn't get the desired effect because we didn't add the axe to the script. And at this point, I don't think we're going to get the desired effect either. But this is where more coding will come into play. So there we go. It is bobbing a bit faster. And as we stop, there we go. It's bobbing a bit slower. So I think the desired effect was not as intended there because it just wasn't bobbing quick enough. So I think if we go to walk axe and set that as 5, and then we'll see how that looks. Hopefully it'll look a little bit better, because although it was bobbing quicker, we could visibly see it was bobbing a bit quicker. I wasn't convinced that that was the best course of action for the axe. There we go. So that's much better. So at this point, we're able to switch swiftly between one animation or the other, depending on whether we are moving or whether we aren't. And like I said, you should definitely take more time to work on your animations here. And if you want your axe bobbing differently while you're walking, then create a different animation. It's simple as that. And it's really, really good fun to kind of play around with these settings and make sure it's exactly how you want it to be. The next important part of this is to get the animation of the axe attacking and being able to press the mouse button or E key or whatever to make that animation actually happen. And what comes into play here is coroutines again, and the ability to delay what is happening with our axe. First and foremost though, we have to actually create the animation for the axe attacking. So let's go to the weapons animation folder once again, and then let's go to hand axe. let's go, in fact, do you know what? Let's get rid of the ground cam first, just so as we don't have to keep changing back to main camera up here. Let's go to hand axe again, animation. Now what we'll need to do is click where we have idle axe here. You'll also see walk axe, and we need to click on create new clip. What this will do is will give us the option to create a new one, and we'll call this axe attack. And the idea of what I want to happen here is I want the axe to quickly swing forward and a bit slowly come back. So we need to kind of have it where it is now and then set the first keyframe where it is. So let's press the record button and let's set the keyframe, so 0.58 minus 0.98. And remember, we're going to use the rotation here because this is where it becomes a lot more, not complicated, but a lot more to the animation. 1.04 and then 6.42, then 83.81 and then 1 and 0. So remember, don't copy these numbers exactly unless your game is identical to mine. You should copy whatever your preset numbers are. So next thing we need to do is, let's say after half a second our axe has completely swung to where we want to attack to. So we'll say keyframe 30, and for that I'm going to move the camera around. Our axe needs to be rotated like that. It needs to be rotated, oops, on the Z, so down like that, and then moved forward round about there, I think. So that should do the trick. So then after perhaps one more second, we bring the axe back. So that is the keyframe of the axe attacking wherever it would be. So then by frame 90, we want it to be the exact same as it was previously. So let's first set the Z rotation to back to 0. And then we can click on the first keyframe and remember those numbers. So 58, 98, 104. So 58.98 and then 104. And the first keyframe for the rotation was 642 and 83.81. 83.81, and it already is 642. So at that point, we've created the attack animation. Now, obviously, as I've said, take more time when you're creating this animation. Mine's very basic and quick for the purposes of the video, but you should perfect your animations. So let's press the record button. Let's go to animator, and then let's click axe attack, and then right click, and then set as default state. The reason we want to do that is because we want to be able to see this attack animation first and foremost. We want to see it actually in play on the scene. But what it does also mean is that we need to go to the script and stop it from running. So if we go to play capsule, scroll down, go to footstep sound script, untick. It's important you untick because if you don't, it will override itself and will play the idle animations. So let's now press play and see how our attack animation looks. After that, we'll do a couple more changes and then we'll work on the actual attack animation. Oh, sorry, the attack code. There we go. Yeah, that's okay. Not convinced about how slow it is, so let me speed that up a little bit. Let me have the speed as 3 and try that. But again, this comes down to how you want to perfect your game. I'm just trying to get it as close to being reasonable as I can, like I say, for the purpose of the video. So this should look a bit better. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to take the axe attack now and untick loop time because we only want it to play the once. So back on animator, right click on idle axe, set as default, head back to scene, and then click on the player capsule and re-enable the footstep sound script. So now what we need to do is create a bit of code to override it so as when we attack, we play the attack animation. That makes sense. So let's go to our script, which is currently footstep sounds, which we will change, don't worry. We now need to add in a bool. And that bool is going to detect if we are attacking or not. Because if we are attacking, we cannot run the risk of using the walk axe or idle axe animation. So serialize field bool is attacking, semicolon. And what that means is that we now need to create another if statement in the update method. So let's go to update and let's say if is attacking equals true, then do the following. And before that, what we actually need to say is, are we attacking? So, or rather, press the attack button. So we're saying if we attack, then we need to set the bool on, which is attacking. So before we get to is attacking, we need to say if input dot, and now this is where I'm going to stop for a second and say I'm going to show you two different ways. It's up to you which way you want to choose. I'm going to do it with the mouse button, and then I'm going to do it with the E key. Or should I do it with the E key and then do it with the mouse button? Let's do the E key first and then the mouse button. So input dot get key, and then in brackets key code dot E, close bracket, open semicolon, and we'll say is attacking equals true, semicolon. Now what we need to do is where we have is attacking equals true and it is blank there, we now need to go to where the close curly bracket is and say else, and then open curly bracket, but delete the close curly bracket because we need to put the close curly bracket further down the method. So follow your if statements to here where you've got if input key code up W. After that if statement, go to the close curly bracket, hit return, and then put another close curly bracket. And what we've done is nested these lines of code inside the else statement. So we're saying if attacking is true, then we're going to do something. If not, then do the rest of that code that we previously wrote. And what we need to do is if attacking is equal to true, we need to run a coroutine. And the coroutine is going to basically swing the axe and then set everything back to false. So let's follow this update method all the way down. And then let's put I enumerator axe attack, open close bracket, open curly bracket. And what we'll do is we need to first say play that animation. So we can say hand axe dot get component in spiky brackets animator open close bracket dot play, and parentheses and quotes the name of our animation, and let me get it right just in case. It's called axe attack, semicolon, and our axe attack lasts for well, it was 90 frames, and we have done it 3 times speed, which means it's effectively 30 frames, which is effectively half a second. So yield return new, wait for seconds, and in brackets 0.5 f, close bracket, semicolon. And again, we have used these lines of code before, so we know what they do. And essentially what we need to do after that is say is attacking equals false, semicolon, because what that needs to do is once we've attacked, we need to go back to the standard idle animation. But because this is a coroutine, we need to tell this if statement here that we are attacking. So we need to say start coroutine, and in brackets axe attack, open close bracket, semicolon. And this may not give the desired effect once again, because I do believe it may run itself over and over. So what we'll do is we'll do a check bool. And what I mean by that is we'll add an extra bool to say that we cannot run the coroutine for a second time. So we'll say serialize field up here again. And I wish I'd stop defaulting to handbooks. It's not the first time it's done that. Serialize field, bool, and we'll have prevent co. And that's just saying prevent the coroutine from running. And what that means is by default, it is going to be false. So if we go here to if is attacking is true, and we'll put a double ampersand, because remember, when it's double bar, it is or. When it is double ampersand, it is and. So this is where logic comes in now. And we're saying if is attacking is true and prevent coroutine from running is equal to false, then what we'll do is we will say prevent coroutine equals true. So at this point, what we've done is we're attacking, so we've set it as true. And essentially we're saying, that we are running this, so that's perfectly fine. So as soon as we start running it, we say, no, it's true, so this if statement can't run, but the coroutine does run. So at the very end of the coroutine, we also need to stop the blocker, which is prevent co, and say false. Now, I know there's a lot of back and forth in this script, but when you look at it and break it down slowly, it kind of makes sense. So let's save that script now. And let's head back into Unity. And I do think we're all good on variables. Let's quickly check. So as soon as it has loaded, let's go to player capsule. And then we just need to check our variables on that script. Come on, Unity. There we go. So player capsule, scroll down, and you can see that we do have those two variables there. So let's press play. And then we shall see if this is going to work as intended. So remember, the default animation is idle, and we can see the idle animation. If we're walking, yep, we can see that. So now let's attack. There we go. So at this point, if you try attacking again, this is where things have fallen down. So let's take a look down here. And we can see that although they are both false, the script is not reacting as it should. So let's follow this script carefully and let's understand what exactly has gone on here. So if we try walking, there we are. We're back to the idle animation. Let's press E. There we go. What that effectively means is that we are missing a line of code. What do I mean by that? Well, after we've finished our attack animation, it doesn't know what animation to play next. So we have to tell it. And that is this animation right here. So if we take that animation and place it at the end of our coroutine, resave it, we should be able to attack and be able to go idle and attack over and over again. So once we've told it that after the attack you should go back to idle, it means that when we go back to Unity and press play to test, we should be able to attack, go to idle, attack, go to idle, and so on. So the whole routine of pressing E key to attack will work as intended. So there we go. So E to attack, and you can see it's back. There we go. So we can keep attacking. And I did say I was going to show you how to do it with a mouse button as well, in case you wanted that. So if we go back to our script, and here where we've got input.getKey, we need to change it after the input, and we need to say instead get mouse button, and in brackets 0. So 0 relates to the left mouse button in this case. So let's resave the script, and then we can head back to Unity, and instead of pressing the E key, we should be able to press the left mouse button now, and it will indeed do the exact same thing as what we previously coded with the E key. So let's press play and have a quick look. As always, give Unity just a moment. Here's loading. So let's go to our game, and there we go, left mouse button. Hopefully you can hear the clicking on my mouse. Awesome. So now we have the attacking animation, the attacking mechanics in place. Everything is really, really good with this attacking now. So just make sure you refine it a tiny, tiny bit more rather than rush it like I have, and you'll end up with something that looks really, really cool at this point. Immersiveness is always important in a game, and a lot of the time an immersion can come from just simple sound effects. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a system that will play a sound effect at random whenever we attack our weapon. So in order to get that done, we need to go to our audio folder, go to effects, and let's import 3 audio objects, which are these ones right here. I know there's a couple more in that folder, we'll get to them later in this video. But as always, head to the pinned comment or link in the description and you can go and download these absolutely free. Just make sure you extract them from the zip file. Next thing to do is we need to get these 3 sounds into Unity, or rather the scene. So let's go to Player Capsule, Audio, and we've got Effects, and we have Footsteps. And what I'm going to do is hold Control, press D on Footsteps, rename it to Attack 01. I'm going to re-enable it up here, set the pitch to 1 for now, and untick Loop and untick Play on Awake. Next I'm going to drag and drop Attack 01 sound over here onto the audio resource. Then I'm going to do the same thing again, so hold Control, press D on Attack 1, rename it to Attack 2, and then drag and drop Attack 2. And then, yep, you've guessed it, let's do it for a 3rd time and have this as Attack 3. And drag and drop Attack 3 onto there. Play around with these settings if you want to. We might play around with the pitch a little later on. But the idea is that we now need to modify our script to incorporate these sound effects to give it a bit more immersion. But before we do that, let's go to Visual Studio and let's close the Footsteps Sounds script, because we're now going to change the script name. Now I have spoken about this before, changing script names and changing class names, so it's important that we get this bit correct. Let's go to our scripts folder and let's change the Footsteps Sounds to Immersion. And this script is going to be everything that is immersive about ourselves, whether it's a footsteps, whether it's the weapon attack, whether it's the sound of the weapon attack. Give Unity just a moment to accept that change of script, and when it has done, we need to go into it and change its name of the class. So let's go into the script, and here where it says public class footstep sounds, let's change this to immersion and save. So now this script will work as intended, no problems at all, even though we've changed the name of it. And if you want, just to kind of make sure that this is all above board and all correct, you can go back into Unity now, go onto Player Capsule, scroll down, and you'll see that it has indeed changed to Immersion. That's now the component. So how do we make it so as we can play these audio sounds? Well, it's very, very easy. We need to add 4 variables at this point. We need to add in the 3 audio sounds, and we need to add in an integer to generate one of those sounds. So what we'll do is we will go and say serialize field, and we will say audio source. So audio source, and we will call it just attack. In fact, I'll have lowercase there, attack 01. And then if we go down, we can see, if press tab, it's already assumed what we're going to do, and it is indeed correct. We could use an array at this point, but there's only 3 variables that we need to use. We'll touch on arrays a little later on in the series, but for now we just need these 3. The next is going to be an integer, like I said, and we'll call this generate attack semicolon. And what this does now is we need to have generate attack make either a 1, 2, or 3. So as then if it's a 1, we play attack sound 1. If it's 2, we play attack sound 2, and so on. So let's scroll down and go to the coroutine that we have. Now the first thing we need to do is obviously play the attack animation, but after that we then need to say generate attack equals random.range. And that is a capital R on both of those. And in brackets, the lowest number we want to generate, in this case it's a 1, and then the highest number we want to generate plus 1. So what it means is that if the highest number we want to generate is 3, then we should put 4. The reason being is it will never generate the maximum number you put. It will always generate up to 1 before that maximum number. So having a random range of 1 to 4, there is 3 spaces there, because obviously 4 minus 1 is 3. So it will generate 1, 2, or 3. Close bracket, semicolon. At this point, we now need to say if generate attack equals 1, close bracket, and then open curly bracket, hit return, then we need to play the sound effect attack 1. So we can say attack 01 dot play, open close bracket, semicolon. And that can then be copied and we can place it here. So attack 2 and 2. And then finally 3 and 3. So what we're effectively doing is not all of these lines of code will run. We're saying that as soon as we are attacking with our axe, we need to play the animation and then say which one of these attack sounds shall we play. And this generate attack will tell it which if statement to follow. It will then play one of those and then it will carry on as normal. So let's save that script now. And then we can head back into Unity. And then we just need to change, or rather add in, those attack variables that we have just created. Because then we will have everything in place and one of those will always play. I like to have different attack sounds because if you have the same attack sound all the time, it can sound a bit repetitive, just sounds a bit dull. But if you randomize the attack sounds, you've got a little bit more immersion. So there we go, attack 1, 2, and 3. So drag and drop attack 1, drag and drop attack 2, and then 3. And I'm going to save my scene because I haven't saved it for a while. Always wise to save when you can. And what we'll do is we'll press play and then we'll see what these sound like. We might change the pitch on 1 or 2 of them just in case. But here we go. We should see all this play out quite nicely now. Ready? There we go. So I'm not sure whether you can tell, but they are different swooping sounds. There is only 3. You could have more if you wanted, but effectively, that's how you can add sound effects to a weapon swing in your game. The final part of this video that I want to add in is the immersion of audio. Obviously, we've already dealt with sound effects, but where is the ambience? Where is the music? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import 2 audio files into this, and it's up to you how you want to kind of take this in, whether you want to use one, both, or use anything of your own fancy. Let's go to the assets. Let's go to audio, right click, create folder, and we'll have this as BGM. BGM is usually just short for background music. So let's go into there and import those other 2 sound effects that come in that zipped file that you can download, again, for free in the pinned comment. One is just simple music. The other is kind of like ambience of, being in nature and that sort of thing. And you can effectively have multiple audio sources playing at the same time. So don't feel like you have to use one or the other. I'll show you an example of that now. So let's go to audio. Let's go and create empty. We'll have this as BGM. And on BGM, let's right click, create empty. We'll have this as music. And then hold control, press D on music and change this to ambience. Now what I'm going to do is drag and drop ambient sound onto ambience, drag and drop music onto music. And I'm going to turn off the music at least for now. But I am going to tick loop, and the same with ambience. I am going to tick loop and make sure ambience is turned on. Let's press play, and we can hopefully hear the ambience all around us. And obviously walking as well and attacking our weapon, everything should sound much more immersive than it did at the start. Awesome. So next thing, let's add in the music. So music, and I think I am going to reduce the volume quite a bit on this, maybe 0.2, and let's just see how that sounds. Obviously this is all a design choice, whether you want your music to sound more important than the ambience, or whether you don't want any music at all. But I just want to show that there are options, as you can see. And if you don't want the ambience, you could always just turn it off, have your music a bit higher, 0.5 for example, and then you could walk around with just music. Entirely up to you. I do like the idea of having some very faint background music and having some ambience as well. But there we go. So what we're going to do is have the... In fact, I'll keep it as 0.5 and let's have the ambience on at 0.75 and see how that sounds. Again, you'll find a lot of going back and forth play testing, different settings that you've got. It's generally just how game development happens. Let's see how this goes. Yep, cool. Things starting to look really, really good and sound really good too. Next time what we're going to do is look at some lighting, we'll look at shadows, we'll look at visuals, and we'll look at a day and night cycle as well, at least in its simplest terms, to see how you can change your game to being night over time. Please remember to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload, and I'll see you next time.